Hey everybody, it's Jack with Future Pastimes, and this is the Savage Board of Conan, and I'm here with GJ, who's a playtester, and we're going to be talking about the god tokens that are in the Adventures of Conan. And we have all the god tokens assembled here. These are the base game, plus they had us add a couple more as part of the campaign that are in the base game, Alkir and Zotli. And then we have the expansion gods. So the Numidian Chronicles adds in Crom and Jebel Sag, and the Queen of the Black Coast adds in Nebatet and Derketo. So quite the pantheon here. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. 14 different god tokens. Now, you're not really going to have all of the god tokens in play. I suppose you could do that as like a I don't know, a bizarre scenario. It's just like, yeah, just put them all in there. Who cares? That would be pretty wild. But normally what you do is you have 2 at random per player. So if you're doing a 3-player game, you're going to have 6 of these gods. And some of the scenario cards, I believe, will have you, they'll assign a few gods. And in some cases, they're like add in Crom and then add in 2 per player. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you can pretty much do whatever you want here, because they are kind of fun, and it is interesting to get a variety of effects in there. So having a few extra, it's probably not going to be a big deal. So yeah, I don't mind throwing a few extra in there just for fun, and you can also pick the exact ones that you want. And we're going to go god by god. We're going to talk about what the effects are, and we'll talk about ways that you can use them. They are not balanced, so they're not equally powerful. Some of them have small effects. Some of them have an effect that you definitely will probably want to use each round. Some of them you may want to save for special circumstances. And the way that the way that they're chosen at the start of each round is part of the resource phase. Whoever is in last place is going to get first pick of the available god tokens. And if you had a god token from a previous round and didn't use it, you're going to hold on to it. So there will a lot of times be a smaller pool for you to choose from. And there may be a point where not everybody is going to get another god token at the start of the round. And if you have 3, you're not going to be able to choose one anyway. So 3 is the limit. You'll have to start playing them to get them back. There is another way you can get a god token, and it's sometimes overlooked. I sometimes don't even explain it, but it is it's an action that you can take in the main phase. And it's there under the kingdom action. It's number 2. It's called Tribute to the Gods. You spend a gold and you take a god token. And if that god token has gold on it, you're going to get that gold. So after you choose your god tokens, and that's the reason I've got gold here, is, let's say that we're using, these 6 god tokens, and the bottom 3 were picked, the remaining ones would get a gold placed on them. And that is a cumulative effect. So if nobody picks Ishtar again in the second round, then at the start of the third round, you put another gold on there. So at a certain point, it's going to be too hard to resist. You'll be like, well, I'm going to get a lot of gold if I just grab this god token. And maybe you will forego. These 2 right here are probably the most popular. The 2, and they're 2 of the sort of the evilest of the gods in the Conan lore. Set and Zath. They're very powerful god tokens. And, as such, the foes usually end up scooping up one or either of them, depending on how many foes you have in play. But any general things you want to say, GJ, about the gods before we start diving into the individual effects and some of the strategies behind them?
To not be scared to use them. Like there are some, especially Za, that you definitely want to save for the right occasion. But since you get one pick every single turn, and they are really powerful, they can come in handy in so many moments, in adventures, in encounters, in plots, in like literally anything. You probably have a chance to use one. So they're there for you to take, and they're there for you to actually take advantage of them as well. So highly recommend it to think twice if you see a situation where you don't know what to do. There's a high chance that you can get a god token to fix your problem.
Yeah, they do. They do kind of. They give you the chance for a sort of Deus ex machina effect right when you need it. And technically, it does need to be your turn to do something in order to play a god token. And it doesn't count as an action, and it doesn't interfere with any of your other, sort of once per turn things. So like there's a rule about free actions, which um, you know in the base game the only other really free action is rolling a kingdom die. So you pay a gold to roll a kingdom die, and you can only do that once on your. You can do that once per kingdom on your turn. But with the Bazaar deck in play, you can buy a Bazaar card. You can't play a Bazaar card on the turn that you bought it. You can play one card on your turn. But if you've got three God tokens, you could use all three of them and as part of the same, transaction. So you might have a situation where you're using one to re-roll a die, or like re-roll all of your dice and then use the other one to re-roll one die, and then use set, for example, to just say, well, let's just change that die to the exact result that I want, and boom, you used all three of them as part of the same thing. So yeah, it's and I like to use them just as DJ said. There's a couple that I might save for, and Zath being the most obvious choice, as we'll get to here very soon, and Ibis I think to some degree as well. But the others is just like, yeah, just use it, change that die or re-roll it, or do whatever that thing is, and then you know you'll pick up something else later on. But take advantage of those as they're good. And so, yeah, I think we can dive in here. And I talk about Set and Zath, so I think that's our best bet. And the effects are described on the back here. So change one of your dice to any result, and that is a really nifty effect to be able to know at some point. We're like, I know I'm going to need to roll a warrior. I need to roll, a scry or whatever, or sorcery. And like Conan doesn't even have that symbol. And if you've got Set, you're like, I know I can do that. And it's a matter of just trying to decide when is the best time. When I'm the foe, I'll be like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and use Set right there in the plot roll, and either to complete that or to, get the bonus. Because I am very plot focused when I'm the foe, but as Conan, I'm probably saving it for beating an encounter, or getting at least some points on an adventure, because it's really handy. And one of the interesting things about Set is that result that you're choosing can be any result. It doesn't even have to be one that's on the die itself. So, like if Conan is rolling his orange die here, and he's got a pretty good number of results, but this orange die here does not have thief and pirate on any of the sides. It doesn't have sorcery, of course, but he knows, all right, I can change this die to a sorcery, and so it doesn't even matter that this die can't roll a sorcery. But it should point out that if you can't say, well, I'm choosing the result of the double. The double warrior. You're only rolling a symbol, so that's the result that we're looking at. So you can't say, yeah, I need this white die here to be an orange double warrior or whatever. You're just making it a warrior, and it wouldn't change the color either. So I kind of need on the encounters where Conan needs to roll certain results on his primary orange dice. He's just using Set to change it to the result. It doesn't change the color of the die, so that would not help him out either. There really isn't any effect that's going to do that except for like a reroll. That's his best bet there. So Set, very powerful, but not all powerful. A couple of little limitations on there, but nevertheless can be a pretty good thing. And technically, yeah, you can use it on a kingdom die if you're like, all right, I'm rolling the purple die, and what I really want is to get a warrior fate symbol, and I'm not even sure there is one on this die, but you'd be like, great, I'm changing that result. So this is considered your die for that purpose, that is A-OK by me. Anything else about set, GJ, that you like to share?
It's basically your get out of jail for free card. It will save you in so many tough situations. It allows you to be a little more reckless, take a little more risk, because you know you can always fall back to a result that will benefit you. If you have a plot that you are so close to getting rid of the bonus of, but you need a kingdom, but you cannot for the life of you crawl a kingdom, you know you have set that can just scoop it up and help you out there. Or adventures for the double, for the 2 extra points or whatever. Encounters, duels even. Like if you are fighting against another player and you're not rolling warriors, set will help you. They
Yeah.
just are extremely versatile, and yeah, it's usually the first or second god token that goes away every single game because it's just that good.
One of the sneakiest applications of set that I try to use and hopefully don't see used against me is on adventures, because what happens in the adventure phase here is the other players are going to roll their dice first, and Conan is going to choose which dice that have successes to apply. And let's say you're the foe and you roll your dice, and Conan, maybe he does take one of them, but you didn't roll. Maybe you rolled a scry, and he's like, great, and the rest of your results are no good. And then the ally rolls and doesn't get anything, and Conan is like, all right, I gotta roll these, and Conan maybe gets a move and a scry, but he didn't roll the thief. And now what you do is you check in, and you check in that same order. Can anybody apply a success? And maybe the ally did have a thief, but Conan didn't use it because he was counting on rolling one himself. You, as the foe, if it's your turn to see, can I apply any of my successes? And I don't have any, but you can be like, oh, but now I do. I'm going to change this one die into that missing result. And now, as the foe, you have completed the adventure, which means that only your dice score, you get the card, and everyone else gets nothing. So I do see that happen every once in a while, and it is a particularly sinister and loathsome action for you to do, but perfectly legal. And I think a very thematic thing, even when the ally does it, it's like, haha, I am going to get the points. At least with the ally, everyone's dice will score, but the ally will take that adventure card and get the rewards for it. But when the foe does it, the foe screws over everybody. So remember that, and that is a particularly on-brand thing for set to pull off there. So don't forget to give that a shot whenever you can. Great god token, great effect. Let's look at the notorious Zath, because this one is already, people are like, wait a minute, is this overpowered? Is this ridiculous? And the answer to both of those is yes. And so what does it do? It doubles your points for an adventure. So that seems pretty like, okay, great. And let me see if I can find a nice one. There's a couple of these that that's losing them, but there's a couple on here. Here we go. So the Star of Kerala. Now this has 4 results on here, and it's 2 points per die. So if you ended up using all of your dice, you would score 2, 4, 6, 8 points. And then if you play Zath, that's suddenly 16 points. It will not double, however, which one of the rewards is you gain 2 more victory points. So that doesn't get doubled. It's only the dice that are used. So I know it says double your points, but that is the application. Your points for dice. But this can be a big deal because some of the adventures are 3 points per die, and there's some that have 5 results. So you could have somebody using all 5 of their dice, and then it's 3 points per die, and then boom, you are doubling that. So that you, at the other players, really have to make sure that doesn't happen. And if it does, that's on them. But how do you avoid it? Well, if Conan is collecting fate tokens and they match a particular adventure, you got to make sure Conan doesn't get to that adventure. You got to really dissuade him. If you're the ally, you're moving him to a different adventure. If Conan has the Zath token, and if the ally has the Zath token, Conan has to be like, I do not want to go to a 3-point per die adventure. So help me get to a 1, maybe a 2. And the same thing, if the foe is usually going to be the one who has first dibs on Zath. Not always, but basically half the time. Then the ally and the Conan, or just Conan if it's 2-player, they got to make sure that they do whatever they can to stay away from a 3-point per die adventure. And sometimes you're out of, you don't have a whole lot of options. So like let's say it's this right here. You've got 3 points per die in Shem, 2 in Argos, 3 in Zamora, and you're like, yuck, I don't love that. Well, you could go to Tehran as Conan, pay a gold to cycle 2. And cycle means you could say, yeah, let's get rid of one of these 3-point adventures and see if we can draw something else. It might mean that you have to now trek somewhere else, but that's what the cycling is there for. It's to improve your odds. So you just everyone's gonna know who has the Zath token, and you just have to try everything you can to minimize how many points, how many dice they're going to be using or able to use, and how many points they're going to get per die. That's the real trick to countering Zath. But sometimes you bide your time. You're like, well, I'm going to score 2 points here. I could turn it into 4 points. That's not big enough for me, so I'm going to hold on to it. So, and I have had games where whoever had Zath was holding on to it for a while. And at some point, they're like, all right, I'm going to get 6 points here. That's as big as it's going to be. I'll take it. Because maybe it's because, again, once they use it, they might still be far enough behind in the victory points that they're going to be able to pick it up again. So that's the other thing, is that if somebody uses it to get 16 points and the other players are trailing them, that player is not going to get Zath again anytime soon. It's going to be somebody behind them will have first chance, first dibs. And if that player has 3 God tokens, they better use one up as quick as they can so that they can then pick up Zath. And then they're hoping to maybe do the same sort of thing, is to get a nice point jump. But yeah, somebody was talking about in their example that Conan rocketed up 30 points. And I was like, well, yeah, somebody was asleep at the wheel on that one. You've got to definitely pay attention. And that's, as your early game, you don't even realize how powerful that is. That has the potential to be help you win the game by all means. It's a big deal. It is meant as a way to quickly catch up. But you can outsmart the other players by when you get it and how you leverage it. GJ.
I think early in our testing, we didn't even realize how many points this thing could give. Like we often just took, I don't know, we got like 3 dice on a 3-point adventure, sure, 9 for 18. That's very good. But more often than not, it was like 6 to 8 points it will get for this token. Then one time, I don't remember if it was me or Jaded, we got a ludicrous amount of points from this, and like the entire table fell silent because we understood that this is good. This now puts a target on your back, and that's kind of the fun of it. And especially since there are some foes or allies that play really well into Zath. I think Imon the Flayed is a foe that basically gets points if Conan doesn't use any of his dice during adventures. So if he gets Zath, he's basically pushing Conan to make a terrible decision whatever he decides. Either he gets points for not giving die, not using dice during an adventure, so Zath cannot be used, or he gives points by using dice, but then Zath can be used. So take good note of who you're playing, what your ability is, and what other people are doing. And this can be really powerful, but also really scary, since other players will try to limit how effective it's going to be. And if they are too good at that, don't worry about just using it for 6 to 8 points. It's perfectly fine. It's still a lot of stuff. Like 8 points is basically what an achievement track, the achievement track gives you for an entire for reaching the end.
Yeah.
5. It's good. It's solid. It's solid amount. And besides, if you have 3 god tokens and you use that as the last one, there's a high chance that there is another god token that has a few gold on top of it. And a few gold can mean a new die in your new turn, or whatever free action you may have available to you. If you play with expansion, there may be bazaar cards or other options that, gold is useful as well. So hold on to it, but don't hold it too much.
Yeah.
Don't be scared to use it.
Even now in our games, when you see Set and Zath, most of us still will pick up Set first,
Yeah.
and that's because we are much better at blocking people out from really capitalizing on Zath, and sometimes the stars have to align for them to really get a lot of points out of it. And so we're going for 4 and 6 points, maybe 8 points. We're like, ooh, we feel really good. We're like, hey, I got 8 points out of Zath. So that's I think a more normal outcome you'll see with Zath. But again, every once in a while you do get pretty lucky because maybe you lucked out with people got wounds. If you have a situation where the turn order meant that Conan had to attempt maybe multiple encounters. So like if you're in Nordheim, then you're going to be Conan has to fight a frost giant and a Scray, and so that they're not particularly tough. But again, if it doesn't work out, Conan doesn't finish it, and let's say the ally doesn't finish it either, but both of them are going to be contributing some progress more likely. So if the foe is like, great, I finished Frost Giants and Scray, and so that means that Conan and the ally would have suffered 3 wounds. That means they have 1 die each when it gets to, and let's say you're doing Shadowzar the Wiccan. Conan can be like, great, I am going to use the ally's die, and I'm going to use my die, but those other 3 dice, that's a great opportunity for, and this is 3 points per die. So that would have been an amazing situation. Of course, you wouldn't be in Zamora and also fighting, Frost Giants. But whatever, you understand what I mean, where if there's multiple encounters, and, if Conan fails the first encounter, he's going to be suffering the penalties right away, which most of them it's a wound, which means it's now even harder for Conan to complete the second encounter. And sometimes there's 3 encounters, and it's just like boom, boom, boom. Conan has no dice, and now Conan is like, I don't even. I gotta give the points to the ally. I'm using the ally's dice as much as possible. Or if it's 4 players, you're like the other foe is really gonna benefit. But sometimes there's just nothing. There's no way around it. Whoever has Zath is going to clean up. And this would be just the ultimate boom. 5 dice at 3 points each, doubled, and it's just like, hello, game over. So it's you got to watch out for that. That's why you got to pay attention to the encounters. Which ones are going to be applicable? Do we try to the ally and Conan has a wild. Conan can do sorcery and use it to cycle out an encounter. And you'd be like, yeah, I just got to get rid of the Scray, which I'm definitely, no matter where we are, if encounters are unlocked, I got to fight that. But maybe if he can get rid of that, he's like, great, this one's going away. Drawing 2 more, and if I'm in Tehran, I just have to worry about some of the, like this might be better because Tehran doesn't have the warrior attribute. So he would be fine. He's like, unlock the encounters. I don't have to fight any of these things. So it may not be what Conan wanted to do with his wild result, but now he's avoiding, the potential disaster. So yeah, just that's what you got to do to succeed. So let's zip on because there's quite a few more.
I just want to mention
Oh, yeah.
one thing about Zath. That if you go on BGG, there's an interesting thread about a player that was kind of shocked at how good Zath can be, and then we delayed that explained a few ways to mitigate how impactful it can be, and that it looks overpowered, but it's not as bad as it looks like.
It's a lesson that you will learn either the hard way or the easy way. I think we properly shamed him into making sure that they don't fall in that situation again. So we have Ishtar, and Ishtar lets you re-roll one of your dice at any time. So that is, it's a dice game, so having some effect that lets you re-roll is, it's pretty much a no-brainer. So it was just a matter of who was going to get it. You're like, oh, I needed to roll a warrior, and now I didn't get it, so I'm going to play Zath and then take my chances here. 50-50, got it. So there you go, perfect application. Ishtar intervenes. The funny thing about the gods in the Conan universe is that for a lot of a lot of fans, and for even some of the people who write on it, it's like the gods are a fraud. There are no gods. It's just wishful thinking. Or if there are gods, they're like these uncaring Lovecraftian entities that are they're not going to intervene on your behalf. But in some, I've read plenty of stories where the gods definitely do intervene. So I'm fine with this. And if the characters, like if the characters want to believe that Set intervened to make sure that you could succeed, then that's what they're going to do. But yeah, it's very straightforward. Reroll one of your dice at any time. So, and again, also if you're like, I'm rolling the kingdom die, and like the savage die's got 2 blanks on it. So you're like, oh, I hope I get all, like, that's a pretty good roll, but maybe you get the blank and you're like, no, I needed to get a fate token, or I needed to get some gold. Yeah, Ishtar lets you do that. And you're re-rolling it at any time. So if you've rolled, let's say you've rolled a bunch of dice for the main phase, and you're like, great, and I've taken some actions, and then things happen, and you're like, oh no, I need another result. Great, I'm going to re-roll this die right now. It doesn't mean I had to have just rolled it, and that was not helpful. I just rolled the same thing, but and them's the breaks. But there you have it. So that's what's useful about Ishtar. It's a little bit even like I'm checking in on these things. Of course, you remember on the adventure, it has to be when you have agency. But let's say we're doing the check-in, and we're checking to see if the foe can complete this adventure or apply any of their dice. They could say, yeah, I'm going to re-roll one of my foe dice here just to see, because now I have agency and I can use this to change one of my results possibly to something useful.
It's like a cheap set in a way. It's less reliable, but can help you in the same way.
Yeah. And I'm going to skip over Ibis here real quick. And Mitra has a similar thing, and it's oops, I don't know if that's the right.
Yeah, no.
No.
It's just the wrong thing.
It's just the wrong thing. So we won't look at it, but I know that the mouse over, it's reroll all of the dice you just rolled. So that can be useful in this situation here where I'm taking actions. Well, I didn't just roll a die, so I wouldn't be able to do anything there. But again, at the start of the main phase, I'm like, I need a lot of movement, and I was like, oh, I got one. And this can be a move, but I need another one. So you play it, you have to reroll all the dice. But let's say you're in a fight and you're just rolling these 2, and you're like, great, here's what I got. All right, well, this is a success, but this was a fail, so I'm going to use Mitra to reroll both of these. It can help you out in the plot phase where you maybe have a few successes set aside, and then you just rolled a couple of your characters, and you're like, oh, I don't need characters. I'm going to use Mitra to reroll. I just rolled these 2. I'm going to reroll these 2 and see if I can get. So this probably would not have been helpful, and definitely not. But that's the chance you take in a dice game, is that the reroll might not go your way, might be worse. But it is nice to have that in your back pocket with like, all right, I just rolled these dice. I'm going to reroll those and see if I can change my fortunes.
I like to think of it as a cheap Ishtar in a way. Like, it's less reliable because it can backfire big time. But at the same time, it's more broad, not just one die, but generally more than one. And again, it's just nice to have in those tight situations where you really need something else. It can really help.
Yeah. All right, we'll take a look at Ibis here. Ibis has an interesting effect, and it's just flip your character. So by now, if you know anything about the game, you'll know that you've got a variety of characters here. And each character has a unique ability and a different ability on the other side of their card. Now, at the start of the game, you're going to pick which side is face up and therefore active. And, Conan, whenever he uses one ability, he flips to the other ability. But not all the characters are like that. So, let's say that you've got Tothaman here. And Tothaman's, the dark side here, he's got the black side and the red side. Let's say you're this face up on this one, and the main phase as your action, you can place an active die and encounter. and it counts as an additional required result, which is pretty good. But what you really want to be able to do is cycle encounters, and that's what his other ability is whenever he puts a die in the encounter track, he gets to cycle one encounter card for free. And remember, cycle is you discard one of the face-up ones, and then you draw two, choosing one to replenish. You may be like, oh, you know what, let's go with that one. It's a little bit more likely to happen, or it's a tougher encounter, or whatever your rationale is. But, neither one of Tothaman's abilities instructs him to flip the card. So he doesn't get a free flip on any of these. So whichever one you start with, that's the one that you have. And you might have started with the gray and thought that was fine, but then realized, oh, this would be better. Well, Ibis would let you flip it. You can also, travel to Zamora, and that is its kingdom ability, is to flip your character card. So, but yeah, knowing when you're in a situation like Conan can on this orange side has an easier time moving up on the achievement track because he's got to be in a matching kingdom, spending that die. So if he's in a warrior kingdom, he can only spend a warrior to move up. But here, he could spend either a fate token, just spend the fate token, or any active die to move up on the kingdom track without the matching attribute. So if he's in a warrior kingdom and he's got a thief result or a thief fate token, he can just say, I'm using this ability to move up on that thief track, and then he would flip his card. And then this side is nice because he can use any fate token as a warrior, and he might want to do that multiple times. So he's like, I'm doing it, I'm flipping it, I'm using Ibis to flip it back, so now I can do this again if I need to. So Ibis, very handy, but situational. So a lot of times you're like, I'm fine with what I got, so don't know that I'll need it. But there you have it.
More often than not, we will see Ibis have a lot of gold and then be taken up more for the
yes.
gold than the effect.
And that's nice too. You're like, great, I'm gonna grab Ibis and I have enough gold to buy a die at the start of the round. Asura also very straightforward. It just lets you cycle one, and that would be you could cycle an adventure, you could cycle an encounter, and if you're using the Bazaar deck, you can cycle a Bazaar card. Those are the only things you can really cycle. But if Conan doesn't like his choices here with the adventures, cycle them. Or if Conan is heading, he's like, I'm going to this 1 point adventure, and you're like, well, I think Asura is going to change that into something more interesting. So we got a 2 point, and we got another 2 point. We'll just stick with this 2 point right here. And so now Conan's got to be like, great, it was all set up for that adventure, and now I have to go somewhere else. And that might be guess what? I guess we're going to move up on the plot track as Defoe because Conan's adventure has gone away. Or let's get a really nice, difficult encounter. And maybe Conan will have to fight two this round. So yeah, it's a pretty minor effect, but played at the right time can be pretty impactful. So I like that one. Now these next two we can take a look at. They're pretty similar, and what they do. So Emir lets you count a character as a warrior, and Bell lets you change any of your results to thief. So certainly, if Bell is in the game, this is a chance for Conan and the ally especially to advance on the thief track a little more easily. Certainly, if you've got any adventures that have a thief result, so like Shadowzar the Wicked has two of those, you're like, oh, great, maybe I'll grab Bell as a way to help ensure I can get some points for that one. Amir is really useful in the plot phase, where you don't want to roll a character, or in duels and fights when what you need is a warrior. But it should be pointed out that both of these are particularly useful in the plot phase, because as you may know, in the plot phase, you're trying to roll, certain results to move up, and you get up to 3 rolls to try to get it. If you roll a character, that counts as a strike, and you have to set that die aside, and if you've got 3 or more of those characters, then it's an automatic failure. But let's say you do get the failure. You can use these god tokens, even if I don't need a warrior, but now I can re-roll that die. Whereas before you can't re-roll a character. Same thing here, like how I rolled a character. Well, I'm going to change it to thief. I might not need thief as a result, but at least now I haven't failed automatically. And if I haven't already rolled 3 times, I'll have a chance to re-roll those dice. And so this is for me one of the most common ways that I'll use these God tokens, especially as the foe, where I am more focused on trying to advance on that plot track than I might be as Conan or the ally. And so I find that these are pretty useful for that. Amir, again, I'm always thinking about why would I need a warrior? And fights and duels are definitely those cases. But the encounters, you probably will need warriors, and
The main phase as well, maybe.
yeah,
If you are in a kingdom with a warrior attribute, you can easily advance really quickly with Emir.
exactly. So I mean, there's multiple times where it's going to be a good time to use it. So it's take your pick.
They are just flexible. They're really straightforward. They may look boring when you compare them to the first two, for example. They're not flashy, but they're just always there to hold your hand and help you out when you really need it.
Yeah, I mean, as opposed to with Ishtar and Mitra, you're re-rolling, so maybe it'll work out. Maybe you'll get what you need. But here, at least it's a known quantity. You can change any die to a thief, so you know that's going to happen. And if you've got a character, which is a symbol that is on all of your dice, and in a couple of sides you've got more than one, or a couple of dice you have more than one side. So knowing that you can change that into a specific result is also handy. Knowing that you've got that. All right, we've got these 2 gods were added as like a daily unlock. So they were not originally even going to be in the game. But there are a lot of gods in the Conan lore. And so for me, any opportunity to add more God tokens was like, great, let's do that. And I had just read a book where Alkir was an important character, and it was a pretty good adventure. I really liked it, and so I was like, oh, that would be kind of fun to find a way in. And I liked the idea of Zotli. So Alkir lets you use a rival's unique fate token. So let's say you're Conan, and the foe has got a sorcery fate token with their tokens here, and you need a sorcery. You're like, great, I'm doing the Hanamar Road here. I don't have a sorcery, but I do have Alkir, and I see that you have a sorcery, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to use that God token so that I can take your fate token. So it says unique. If Conan has one of these, he can't just burn somebody else's. It's got to be a fate token he doesn't have. And but there's plenty that they might not have. So you'll get plenty of, I think, opportunities to use a God token like Alkir. So this is one that we haven't played with a lot because, again, it was added so late in the campaign. The game was designed. Campaign was live, and this was designed, probably 2 weeks before the campaign, maybe 3, maybe a little bit longer than that, but not for, like I said, we'd already submitted the whole game and the expansions. But they said, yeah, we want to do a couple more God tokens. And I said, I love that idea. So that was, it was like we were looking for more effects that nothing else quite did that. So we didn't really have anything that let you just use somebody else's fate token, and it seemed like a God token sort of effect. So that's what I came up with. And you'll definitely, this is, it's going to help you out and hurt the other player, which who doesn't love that in a Conan game?
But don't forget that you can also just use a fate token to change the roll of your die for literally no purpose other than using that fate token of your opponent. Yeah. If you're going into if you're doing encounters and you maybe see that the adventures you're going in has a kingdom requirement and you see the foe with a kingdom fate token, you can easily use this god token to change one of your mood results to a kingdom. Even if it doesn't help you, it means that they will not be able to score that die later on if they don't roll the kingdom themselves.
Yeah, and I will point out again in the plot phase, as long as you haven't rolled 3 or more characters, if you, let's say on your second roll, you've got now you're up to 2 character results, and you still don't have some of what you need. You could use a fate token to change one of your characters into that result. So let's say you have a kingdom fate token, but you don't need to roll a kingdom symbol. But changing this to a fate means that you get to re-roll this die, and you could also use Alkir the same way. You'd be like, I'm going to use your sorcery fate token to change this to sorcery, even though I don't need it. But at least now, I get to re-roll that die along with any of the others, and that helps you out. You can't use that fate token trick if you do have 3 characters. So if I've rolled 3 characters, the only thing that can save you now is the use of a god token. So in that case, Alkir, you could play Alkir to change, steal the sorcery, change this to sorcery, and now you don't have 3 characters and you do have a die you can reroll. So that's how you get around that. But yeah, it's just one of a couple of nuances of the game, but there you have it. But yeah, a pretty sneaky and useful effect. And then we have Zotli. And Zotli lets you exchange challenge tokens. And it's almost no limit. So if you've got, a couple of challenge tokens on the board, and let's say that oh, that's a good one, and actually that's a good one. And I got to shuffle these up a little bit more because I'm always pulling out the same ones. Be like, all right, so this one's bad, this one's good, and your character is over here. You're like, I'm just gonna switch these around. That's nice. You can also say, I want to switch this one with one from the bag. Great. Or the Tothaman has one he's been holding on to, and I don't know what it is, but I know that that this is good, and he's right next to it. So I'm just going to switch these around, and maybe it's something that is worse, and that would not be worse. That would be worse for Conan. So yeah, or between 2 players, the foe and the ally have one. You can be like, yeah, I'm exchanging those 2. And Conan can get challenge tokens. It's harder for him to play them, but not impossible. And maybe he wants to switch one on the board with one in his stash or between players. So it's a pretty minor effect, but it's got a few different applications, and you definitely can find some good uses of that, I think.
I think it opens up for a ton of mind games, especially with foe like Totamon that really likes to play with challenge tokens.
Yes.
You really start seeing the foe place tokens like next to Conan or on adventures. Maybe tokens that are really good because they have this god token specifically. But Conan now sees, I don't know, the adventurers surrounded by 3 challenge tokens that he's sure they're like 3 really hard fights. So maybe he doesn't want to go there, but then the last action you see Potamon just play this and move in. Suddenly they have 3 victory points at the end of the game, or gold, or an extra action, or something.
Yeah.
So the amount of mind games this opens up just by being in the game really, really is fun.
Yeah, so these are all now base game god tokens. So you got a pretty good variety of effects, and then we've got 2 more for the expansion. So Queen of the Black Coast adds Nebatet and Derketo. So with Nebatet here, it lets you focus a rival die on your turn. So what does focus mean? So let's say that I'm Conan, and we've got Tothaman has made a few actions. He's got a wild here. He's got a character. He's got a move. And we want to limit what he can do. So by focus, you are changing that die to one of its other results. So let's say that Conan is trying to keep Tothaman from putting more dice on the encounter track. So maybe the one with the move is already covered up with a warrior, and with the wild or something else, Tothaman might be able to put another die up there. But by focusing this to a character. Characters can't go on the encounter track, so you may be like, great, you can't do anything with that, or let's say I'm going to, probably not change it to that, but, change it to a warrior, and this maybe helps you add this to your warrior pool, whereas before, if it was a move or something else, you're like, I couldn't add this in there, or I didn't want to add it in there. Of course, it's one of your rivals' dice, so it is a little bit sneaky. So yeah, it's you're focusing one of their active dice, a die that is available to them, so that they can't use it, or they can't use it how they were intending to use it. That's really what it's all about, and changing out things. So yeah, it's not as earth shattering as, oh, I'm scoring 20 points with Zath, or changing my die to anything, but it is, something that you want to think about, and knowing that you can do that might open up like I use this a lot in the main phase. That's really what it's all about. I want to make sure that they're not able to do the sorcery that they want to do, or limiting them to moving or something like that. So it's
I really like it in adventures because this is super sneaky in adventures.
yeah, absolutely.
Because like you know that like you have a hard adventure in front of you, and you know that the foe has all the results they need, but you're confident that you really cannot do by using three of your own and one of the ally dice, and you really don't want to give the foe any points. You can just make sure that they are not getting that result anymore by playing the god token. Now suddenly that thief they have is now a character, so totally useless.
Yep.
It's super fun, especially since you can play it all, like you can play it as a reaction to seeing what their results are. And so if they had already made a plan up by, I don't know, using Zav, they were already planning ahead of using this, and that god token. Now suddenly everything is up in the air.
Yeah.
It's super sneaky, it's super fun.
Yeah, I like it. And then we have Derketo, and this is exchange two identical fate tokens for a wild fate token. So a lot of times you'll find like, hey, I got a couple of these trade tokens. I don't necessarily, these show up as rewards a lot. So you're like, this helps you to trade something else, or change, because the trade symbol is not one that you can roll. If you've got a wild, or you can deploy to trade, so it's not hard to do a trade action. But this is a great way to be like, all right, I'm gonna jump those and get the wild. So a wild token, this is whatever you need it to be when you need it to be it. So it's really handy to get. It doesn't show up in the base game, so it comes in the same expansion that Derketo comes in. But it's a way that you can get a hold of those. Otherwise, because the only way to get a wild token, a wild fate token, is an effect that specifies it. So this is
Triumph
one way
tokens,
to
yeah.
get it. Yeah, it shows up as a reward in some of that expansion's other cards. But yeah, you can't just be like, oh, I'm just gonna grab one of these, and even where something says grab a fate token of your choice, you still can't get a wild fate token. It has to be specified. So Derketo is just handy for that. It's a good one for someone who can stockpile a number of fate tokens. And if you get that, it'd be a good idea to say like, yeah, I'm gonna get some gold. I'm gonna roll the kingdom dice, pick up whatever fate tokens I can. It might help you figure out which adventures to do, or to steer clear of if someone else has the fate tokens. But then, yeah, if you can be like, all right, I don't know if I need all these moves. I'd rather have a wild, which is much more flexible. Because if I need it as a move, I can use it as a move. So yeah, pretty straightforward there. And then we have the Numidian Chronicles, has two god tokens, so we'll talk about Jebel Sag first. This is discard up to 3 encounter cards and redraw. So it's not quite cycling. So you might say like, yeah, none of these are pretty good. So you don't get to pick the best of 2 for each replacement. It's just like, those are all gone. Now we've got 3 different ones, and these are very different. So you might have better luck snagging Conan in a trap here, depending on maybe he wasn't in any of the military or whatever. He's like, yeah, he's in Tehran, which is both a savage and a port. Be like, great, he's gonna have to fight mummies and corsairs. So, and this one's pretty tough. You need 4 results. 2 of them have to be pirates. Yeah, it's a tough one. So yeah, that's what. It's also good for Conan, because Conan be like, I don't want to do that, so I'm gonna play that token and get rid of these. But you might get something worse. You never know. So that's why it's not quite a cycle. If it were cycle, you would get rid of that and draw 2 and pick which one you want. You're like, oh yeah, let's do that. Giant snakes for sure, and then do that. So less, up to 3 cycles would have been more powerful, but this is still pretty good. So.
It's just useful. There's basically, yes, you don't have agency on what encounters you get, but especially for someone who likes to cycle encounters and likes to really set up the perfect track, like, I don't know, Potamon or someone, then
Yeah.
this is perfect.
You
It
might be
just does
like,
your job much
this
easier.
snake, as long as, as long as you're not in one of the four kingdoms with the snowflake, you're like, this giant snake is gonna come after Conan. So you're like, great. So like, I'm just gonna use Jebel Sog to get rid of the Corsairs and the skeletons, and see if we can get something better. Here we go, zombie warriors, any kingdom. That's pretty good. And Demon Fiend, it's got to be one with the trade symbol. But yeah, there's a couple. There's a couple down here. There you go. Like if you're in Kush, great. He's gonna have to fight all three of these. Boom. So yeah, definitely easy to understand, and you'll know when's a good time. And that brings us to Crom. So Crom,
My
not in the base
favorite.
game, but is in the expansion. But this one is you take control of Conan at the end of the resource phase. So what does that mean? Well, that means you take Conan's character card, you take the little resource guide. If you're using, these triumph tokens, you get those. That's a little extra that was part of a daily unlocks. But you get the dice, and if Conan had any fate tokens on his card, not fate tokens, challenge tokens, not fate tokens, but
Or
there's a couple,
quests or
like here you
anything.
go. So yeah, request tokens, anything that says put it on your card, that would go too. But any gold or fate tokens, or anything else that doesn't count here would stay with the player. So yeah, you do that, and you do have a chance. It says at the end of the resource phase, but you have a chance to buy your dice first. So if you're like, great, I'm gonna. In fact, you do it after the buying the dice, so you're not like, oh, well, I'm gonna let you spend all your gold to buy 3 dice, and now I'm gonna change. So that's why the gold doesn't change. But you're like, I want to take control of Conan, and why would you want to take control of Conan? Well, Conan has the most agency on the adventures, and like let's say you have a bunch of, I've got a kingdom fate token and a scry, and I've got a thief. All I need to roll now is another thief and a warrior. It's 3 points. This is a great time to be Conan. Go to Zamora and try to get all these points, knowing that I only need to, 3 of my dice can just be applied without, no matter what they roll. And so this lets shake things up. And this was originally how the game was meant to be played. It was, in fact, it didn't even necessarily need a god token. It was kind of an every round, whoever was in last place could basically decide to be Conan. It went through a few iterations, but it was the sort of thing that Gale Force 9 was like, no, make that an expansion thing. We just want everyone to just be the same character. But I was like, what if everybody wants to be Conan? And it is a Conan game. And there's not a lot of people like, I'm a huge fan of Conan, but I really just want to play Janissa. I guess there's some people like that, but it's, how do we decide who gets to be Conan? And that was how I settled on it. It was the Crom God token. You get it, so and then you can play it to boom. I'm going to take control of Conan. And then one of the things that that expansion adds in is the idea of something called the Rogues Gallery, and that lets you have a variety of allies and foes, and even other Conans. If you've got the expansion Conans, Conan the Avenger, Conan the Slayer, they have different abilities. And so you have this rogues gallery, and if I take control of Conan and that player was the foe, they return the foe to the rogues gallery and they decide which foe they want to be. They might say, you know what, I think I'll be the Bone Woman now, and so they jump on. The Tothaman token would stay where he was, so if he was, in Stygia or wherever, he stays there, but if nobody is actively playing Tothaman, then you can't duel him and nothing happens. He might come back into the game later on, but if you say like, yeah, Bone Woman starts in Zingara, so she would get added to the board, and then you start playing as that. And that's how Crom works. So it can have a huge impact on the game. Moving around, switching out which character is who, can be a big deal, but it does let you balance things out if you feel like, oh, Conan just got, it's too easy for Conan to do the adventures. The adventures can be a big deal for the rewards and for doling out who's going to get points. And so, yeah, if you haven't managed to wound Conan or set him back so that he has to use your dice, this is a good way to take over. And you might be holding on to Zath, and now you've taken control of Conan, and you're going to try to do a double whammy and score a bunch of points. Well, then yeah, good luck to the other players because this is a pretty powerful effect as well.
I think it's probably my favorite God token in the entire game, just because okay, maybe we will do another session of this that explains the design history and process that this game went through. But originally, this, as you said, was a normal effect. So we saw Conans and allies and foes just switch around almost every turn. And honestly, I love that because it allowed you. Okay, you lose a bit of the I'm playing as Conan, but it allows you to plan ahead and be so incredibly sneaky because Conan is really good at fighting, is really good at doing encounters and adventures. But maybe one turn you really want to focus on something else. So that Conan does really well the achievement track, but the foe does really well the plot, for example. So maybe one turn you want to be the foe, one turn you want to be Conan. And this single token allows you to have incredible flexibility at the cost of being a little harder to play, I guess, because it requires you to have a bit of broader knowledge of how the game works, what characters are there, how they interact with each other, etc. But if it was for me, I would always include Chrome, like not even close.
Yeah.
I would include Chrome and then the other six or eight or whatever.
Yeah, I do
Chrome
like
just
to
is always
include
there.
Crom as just an extra. So it'll be like, all right, we're using, it's 4 players, we're using the 8 gods at random, and then Crom.
Yeah,
Now,
it's
what
just
should
cool.
be pointed out, and this is something I kind of went around and around with Gale Force 9 on, and in the end, it doesn't seem like they quite grasped the importance of the player markers really shouldn't be tied to the character because if you take over as Conan, you're not taking over as Conan's score. It is a player marker, not a character marker. And that's for the plot and the achievement track as well. These are all supposed to be player colors. So I'm for my own personal edition of Conan. I'm actually going to have some colors that are not associated. Green with the ally and orange with Conan, etc., etc. I'm gonna have completely independent colors. I'm actually working on like some markers that look like gems, because yeah, Conan loves to get his hands on some jewels. So yeah, if you're this far as Conan and then you take over, you're this far as the foe. If someone else is taking Conan, so you move up one more, and that's great. You've unlocked the die. So yeah, same thing with your progress or whatever. So keep that in mind if you're using Crom. You're changing your character and any tokens on the character and the dice, but that's it. That's all that you are exchanging. So any of their tokens and their score or their achievement advancement on any of those other tracks stays with whoever they were, your original player color. So keep that in mind. If you were orange, because that's going to be one of your colors for now. I mean, it's easy enough. You can get we use cubes here in TTS. It's a pretty easy way to do it. You can get whatever kind of markers you want, and you can get little
Without
meeples
shame,
if you
yeah.
want. It doesn't matter. And pick out some colors. You can get some like I like to play with purple, so that's what I'm gonna get. And yeah, I'll pick up some other colors, but an important thing to understand is that your score does not move.
I
So yeah,
think we
let us
covered
know.
everything.
Let us know in the comments what's your favorite god, and what what questions you might have about any of their interactions. Um, and yeah, I mean, somebody asked me like, will there ever be another expansion? Probably not, but if there is, it would include the rest of the map of the Hyborian Age, and there's already a bunch of god tokens, mostly associated with those kingdoms that we want to add in there. And we might just do some like TTS version of it that people can play. So I don't know how easy it is to make these tokens because that's a very strange shape. Even here in TTS, it's actually 2 tokens glued together. So, but yeah, let us know if you have any questions, which God tokens you like to have in play, which ones you'll be like, oh, we're going to leave Zath out for a little while until we understand what we're doing, which is fine. But yeah, A lot of the other base game ones are pretty straightforward. None of them are particularly complicated, except for Crom. It's just there's a big ripple effect when you're switching characters. So, GJ, any last words for our faithful?
Something I said on the Zav thread on BGG is that if you don't want to play on a specific day with a God token, just don't.
Yeah,
Take it out of the pool and make your own game. Have fun with it. You don't have to
exactly.
follow the rules book one by one. If you want to play in a certain way, do it. Nobody can stop you. It's your game after all.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what we do too. We sometimes go ahead. We've even done a thing where we drafted God tokens. We thought that
Yeah.
would be kind of a fun way to do it. And we picked our characters, and so we knew who had what kinds of abilities, and so knowing that, you're like, oh, so and so is gonna really do this on the encounter track, and so you're like, it's really important that we be able to cycle or get some of those out or get worse things in. So somebody was drafting those, but yeah, somebody's like, oh, we're gonna have Zath in there for sure. Set almost always. Everyone's like, we got to get Set in there, and I'm always like, we got to get Crom in there. What are you talking about? It's Conan. So there you go. That is it for this one, everyone. Thanks for watching, and we will see you again soon.